So you want to learn Japanese. I know it could seem overwhelming and you might not know what to do. And while I don't have the answers to all of your questions, I'm sure, here are some tips and things that I wish I knew before I started learning Japanese. So just a little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Tony here at Rising Sun Retro. I've been in Japan now for almost 7 years, and I've studied the language for nearly 12 years. I'm definitely not perfect, and I have slacked off a lot. But I do think that overall, I'm able to communicate at a decent level. I'm able to get by in my everyday life and even handle things like going to the ward office or tax office or whatever. So I think I could at least help a little bit for those who want to get started on your Japanese journey. This might seem obvious, but I really implore you to learn the actual sentences and not just the individual vocabulary words. Why? Personally, I just think it's because vocabulary has so many different contexts that it can be used in that if you learn a lot of words, you might not end up using them the right way. I find it more useful to just learn the sentences outright for things you want to say. This can also help us not make sentences that are similar to our native language and instead make ones that are more natural sounding in Japanese. Ima nani shiteru would be the example of a Japanese sentence, but if you're an English speaker, you're probably going to want to throw in a word like you, right? Like anata or anata wa nani shiteru desu ka or something like this, right? But that's not really something people here say. Now this is a simple example, but the harder it gets, the more you might find your native language slipping into Japanese. So I always say learn the sentences and lots of them in the beginning. There's a ton of kanji to learn. This is the unescapable truth of Japanese language learning, and Chinese too. There's just no getting around it. You have to know at minimum 2,000 different kanji, and on top of that, you're gonna read up on things like the onyomis, which are like the Chinese readings, and the kunyomis, which are the Japanese readings. And some kanjis have multiple readings for both. But honestly, don't even worry about it. You might see in your Japanese textbook something like this, but me personally, I think it's very counterproductive to learn kanji this way. It's so much information to take in and you're not going to be immediately using. So what do? Going back to my tip on sentences, just learn the kanji readings in the context of the sentence. For example, this word here, jinzo ningen, which means artificial human or android. The kanji here has two readings for this character. It could be jin or nin. Why? Who cares? That's not really that important. You honestly don't need to worry about it in the beginning. I think it's better just to kind of accept that it's just the way it is and move on from there. There's two readings, and in this situation, jinzo ningen, it can be used both ways. Worrying about what readings go where and in what context is something I think for a higher level advanced student, and in the beginning it's just too overwhelming. So don't worry about it. Learn vocab in the context of the sentences with the readings, and you should be fine. I watched a ton of YouTube videos on how to learn languages over the years, and all of them had different tips and study tactics. Some things would be like read more, listen more, don't worry about writing. But to me, I found it most beneficial to do all of them. As I progressed and went on with different languages, I always lamented the fact that I didn't do enough in each of the categories for a certain language. It'll be very hard to speak Japanese at first. Of course, you don't know the language, but even just sitting at home practicing how to say words, how to say sentences, either by listening to videos, mimicking slowly, and then picking it up as the days go on, I think this is a very beneficial study tactic. I think doing all four of these as much as you can works out your brain in different ways. Two of them are basically inputs and the other two are outputs. And of course, it goes without saying that you have to do more listening than you're already doing. I watched tons of anime, I played lots of video games, I listened to tons of radio dramas, and this definitely helped me get accustomed to the language and get used to it, I think, faster than I would have had I just taken classes. And of course, it does take time. I did this over the course of maybe 2 to 3 years, and there were breaks in between. I'd done other languages too, but just having all of that listening, doing a lot of writing and practicing with the sentences was really helpful for me. I understand that most of you are probably adults or you're in college, so you don't have a lot of free time, and that's okay. Just be sure to set up a consistent schedule. Try to listen for an hour a day, for example, or even 30 minutes. As long as you're doing it every day and you're working out all four of those different categories, I think you'll be fine and you'll make good progress. It's not about fast progress, but it's about making steady, consistent progress. This is something you might have heard before, and I think a lot of people try to do this when they learn a new language. I've seen it here in Japan, and I've seen it when I was back home in the States. Everyone tries to be as perfect as they can be, but then they get upset when they fall short. Once you accept that you're not going to be perfect, I think the language learning process becomes much easier. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to try hard. Of course, you have to try and do your best, and I think mimicking and shadowing and trying to get the accents down, the mannerisms, and sort of embracing everything is very important, but you don't have to be perfect. Don't let that stop you on your path to progress. I saw someone say something that they didn't want to bother Japanese people with their poor accents, so they were trying their best to perfect the pitch accent or something like that. I just thought this is probably the worst advice you can give to anyone because, let's be honest, we don't have enough time to become suddenly native Japanese speakers overnight or over the course of 5 years or 10 years. You can be good enough, and that is okay. Don't put unrealistic expectations on yourself because you will burn out. It's happened to me a lot of times, and I wouldn't want to see that happen to you either. This might seem like another obvious point, but do as much as you can in Japanese, be it stuff that you like or even stuff that you don't like that can still help you out. Things like reading children's books or simple sentences, even playing video games in Japanese, or even watching anime. I'm not saying you have to watch it for 6 hours a day like I used to do, but every little bit of Japanese you're inputting will help you in the future. And while I talked about not having to be perfect, try your best to do a Japanese accent. Try your best to mimic the sounds, because if you put yourself in, if you dedicate yourself and you go all in, I think it really shows in how you communicate, not just with your language abilities, but just your general atmosphere, your general aura that you might have while communicating. There's a certain feeling that people have when learning a second language because it's a different culture, it's a whole different set of ideals. But once you stop treating it like it's something on the outside, and once you embrace it and let it become a part of you, and you take it on as a part of yourself, I think there is a big difference compared to someone who does that and someone who doesn't. Embrace the different aspects of the culture, be it the pop culture or the traditional culture, the food culture. There's just so much about this country. There's a lot to take in, and I think it's a waste not to fully embrace it as much as you can. And by doing that, you can even move past your initial goals, because those change the more you language learn. You might not have the same goals as you did in the beginning compared to 5 years in. If you embrace the culture, I think you'll be using the language in different ways that you didn't expect in the beginning. But that's it for me. What do you think? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This is my first time doing a video like this with tips and trying to be helpful with Japanese, so I hope it can at least give you a positive mindset and something to look forward to when you begin learning the language. It is difficult, but you can definitely do it. See you all again soon. Thank you so much for watching. ご視聴いただきありがとうございました. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. またね.